Infinite Shaman was one of the most powerful decks in the mini set for the Great Dark Beyond. The idea of the deck was to use Fizzle to be able to get infinite amount of snapshots into your hand, and then it could get infinite resources using Triangulate. The deck is actually going to be nerfed very shortly, and this gameplay footage that I have coming up is the pretty much the reason why this card needed to be nerfed. It's the fact that you can access your cards indefinitely for the entire game is beyond ridiculous, and it pushed out the game lengths to an unacceptable amount of time. The yeah, so in this gameplay footage, you'll see me and my opponent both use the infinite combo, and they're using warrior, I'm using shaman, but both of our decks are using fizzle, and then both of our decks are able to access fizzle many, many times throughout the game. So you'll see the game essentially turn into a stalemate with an unreasonable amount of armor, unreasonable amount of health, and so on. So I hope you enjoy the gameplay footage, and I'll be commentating now. So they've just played Star Portal down, which isn't too much of a worry for me. Obviously, getting the Banshee is probably the most concerning, especially in an Infinite match. I played on my Cutler to be able to try and get my lift off, because I am trying to, with lift off, it is one of the more powerful cards in this archetype, especially to draw through your deck and make sure you can access what you need to. The opponent, they're more than likely going to be going for their infinite play at this point in time, like just because they are playing warrior and that generally will have the infinite in their deck. They could potentially try and use bombs on me as well, so I need to be making sure I'm thinking about that at the same time. I have my Cutlass, so I end up just trading with it. It probably was a little bit of a misplay there. I really should have probably used the pop-up book to instead of trading the 2-2, so I could apply a little bit more pressure onto the opponent. I do draw into my Fizzle, which is quite good. It means that if they have Ham, it won't be able to get it out of my deck, and they quite often don't use Dirty Rat. They use a Starport here. It gets them the armor one, which is a little bit concerning as well, because the armor ones with infinite means they can just keep getting more and more armor and they can get more and more buffed. I am hoping that I am able to get into Banshees at this point in time too. I do know by the end of this that I actually don't end up hitting Banshees, so you'll see what ends up happening as a result of it, so it makes this game ridiculous. Um, yeah, so I end up playing down my defense crystal just to be able to defend my board a little bit. Obviously, getting it into the pool is quite important to make sure that I can keep gaining armor against my opponent. In general, the defense crystal is probably one of the stronger cards in an infinite matchup, just to make sure that you are protected and you're continuously gaining armor each time. My opponent gets another armor Viking, so it gains them more health, more armor, and another one. So this is 4 now, which is getting to a very incredible amount of damage they can defend. They gain 28 now each time they use a Starship launch, so it's going to become a very difficult game. I'm definitely hoping they get some medvacs just to, compensate for the fact that they keep getting Vikings. I end up just trading my Liberator and then putting into thing because I do want to make sure it's inside the pool, especially if I do need to try and go a bit more aggressively into my opponent. They end up playing down their Ham, so they obviously are trying to look for things like my Fizzle, Incendious, Ceaseless to be able to take out my board and to take out my minions that are there. I trade my crystal into it and my other one into it just so then I can get my minions into the pool. And right now I'm just thinking of how I'm going to make a really good snapshot because I do have both Ceaseless and I have Triangulate and I have Jim Raynor in my hand. So I just play down the gold panner here. I just want to make sure that I'm clearing out all the cards that I need, and I just pass. It possibly was a play to get out the totem, but with the totem it means that I'd be board locked, and getting board locked against the opponent is something that I don't really want to be doing, especially since they could potentially, do something a bit concerning for that. So I just play down just the gold panner, because if they use Bob or something, it means that I don't get access to my turn, and they can just keep building up tempo. I draw a lock on, which doesn't really mean too much at the moment. Since I'm trying to get infinite now, I do want to try and reduce down the cards that are in my hand. I don't really mind too much if what I don't really mind too much about using the lock on there because I do want to make sure that I'm getting access to my Fizzle relatively shortly. It probably was an idea in this turn using the Fizzle, but I do also want to use my or think about using my other cards that are here too. I do get my Incendiars because I know that this is going to be quite a long drawn out game, especially since they have the 28 health coming from their battleship. They end up using a hydration station to get their ham. Obviously, they're trying to hit some of my key minions from my deck. A defense crystal is quite important in this matchup just simply because it helps you gain extra armor and gain extra. It helps you gain extra armor and extra health for into your opponent. I end up drawing my own Viking here, so it does protect me a little bit. And I have the ham here, and I just play down my missile pod just to be able to clear it out of my hand, because it means that with this hand here, I can use my triangulate play quite easily. I more than likely next turn will be playing down my Titan just to get it out of my hand as well, because it's not particularly a great card in this matchup. I am possibly also looking for Shutter Block to be able to get many heaps of Incendius's eruptions into my deck, because that's another way that I potentially could try and combo down this opponent, but they have a extremely high amount of health at the moment, which is probably going to be too much, especially since they're going to be gaining quite a lot of armor. If I draw into Thrall's Gift here, I do want to make sure that I'm using Hex to try and reduce down the amount of health they can gain. But with their Vikings, it does make it quite difficult to be able to deal with what they have. They use a Whirlwind here, which I'm not too concerned about. It clears away those frogs that were getting in my way, especially since I didn't have a particularly easy way to clear out of them. And I draw into the Cutler here. So the Cutler is a card that you don't really want to be having in your triangulate hand, because it's a card that you can't really, it recycles itself since you always will have the snapshots in your hand as well. I end up just playing down my totem again. It possibly was more correct trying to get the Titan out of my hand, since the Titan isn't very useful at this point in time. It isn't very useful in this matchup now, since it's so far into the game. It's more so used for tempo sort of plays and things like that. They end up getting their Fizzle down onto the board, so they will be able to now access all the cards that they need for it. So if I was using Dirty Right, it would be a way to be able to take out this sort of infinite combo that they have, because it's quite possible they wouldn't have the particular thing that they need to. I drew into my Thrall's Gift here. Unfortunately, it's a little bit too late. I do also get my Viking as well, so it possibly was better in terms of that situation just to play down my Titan earlier so I could keep access to the mana. But in reality, it doesn't matter too much, because Thrall's Gift, since they haven't got a Raven, also is somewhat decent too. And I'm just thinking right now about if I'm going to launch my Starship or not. Launching my Starship would be fine in this situation, but I do want to get the extra buffs inside of it as well. Without having Banshee and without having many of the Liberators and things, it does mean that their Starship's going to be able to be doing quite a lot to me. I end up drawing into Fairy Tale Forest. It's a card that it's not a particularly excellent card to be having in this sort of matchup. I also do have my Hex as well. I use the Fizzle here just because I do need to make sure that they don't try and get bombs onto me. And I use the Triangulate onto my Snapshot to be able to get extra Snapshots. If they use the bombs here, it could be a bit of a difficult situation for me. I use another Fizzle here just so I can get more of the Snapshots into my deck. And obviously it keeps on building more and more cards that are available for me too. I hit my 2-1 so I can get into the pool and launch my I think I launched my Starship. I use the Titan power first, then I launch the Starship, so damage will all go face. I don't think that I have any of the Banshees in the pool though, so it doesn't particularly matter in that situation. And then I use another Triangulate to get another set of Snapshots. In this situation, it probably was, I probably should have just held for this, in hindsight, I probably should have held for future turns just to be able to get more Snapshots into the deck. They end up using a Brawl here, so it is going to clear most of my minions, because I do have the 3. I do fortunately get to keep my Battle Cruiser, which is quite useful just simply because they won't be able to trade very well into it, especially if they do get poisonous or those sorts of things. As you can see, their Battle Cruiser gets them a lot of health as well, which is not great. The difference between my Snapshot and their Snapshot, though, is the fact that my Snapshot has a lot less cards in it. And the idea behind that is with the Snapshots, you don't want to be having too many cards, because it ends up possibly causing you a lot of issues and a lot of difficulties going into the future parts of it. As you can see, I do play down the shutter block here, but it ended up ultimately costing me, like, in terms of the gameplay amount of time and things like that. I, in reality, should have just been trying to use more triangulates to get more of the snapshots into my deck to counter the TNTs that they would be launching into my deck eventually. I end up just using the Hex and then just passing, and then I'm just about to they end up using their Ziliax here, so they're able to trade into it. It also means that they can get access to their hydration station as well. That also shows that their Ziliax isn't inside their pool because of the fact that they had it on the right-hand side when they drew into it. I just changed it to 2 times speed as well, just because the gameplay footage ends up being very samey. The fact that I do just use my combos and then do some buffs and do some things like that. Like, it's not really too much difference. I use a Lightning Storm there so I can trade into the Ziliax. It also means that there's just, it doesn't have any Reborn left on it anymore. They put down their Bombast, so it gets a TNT shuffled into my deck, and then I use an Eruption. And a few eruptions go off onto my opponent. I play down the Ceaseless just to get rid of the totem. It also reduces down the amount of cards in my deck. So at this point in time, I should have been using my triangulates just to be able to get heaps of the snapshots. Like, I should have gone snapshot, triangulate, snapshot, triangulate, snapshot, triangulate, just to be able to try and get more and more of those snapshots, which you'll notice that I'm doing at the moment. But in reality, I should have been building up my deck a lot more, just so then they couldn't put heaps of the TNT dudes into my pool. They trade the Ziliax here. I end up milling a TNT, luckily. I get the Ceaseless Expanse onto the board. Like, it obviously clears that stuff that's there. But since they've got so much armor, it is quite a difficult situation. So I do want to make sure, especially if I am building this sort of strategy, I need to make sure that I'm getting as many of the... I need to be making sure I'm getting as many of the snapshots into my deck as possible, because I end up also finding out in this game as well that 60 cards is the maximum cards in your deck. I didn't actually know that was the limit that was available for it. So they end up putting down their Fizzle, their Zola, and they use Ceaseless Expanse onto me. I end up mulliganing my own Eruption, and then I use the triangulate to get more of the snapshots in. My opponent draws their final card, which obviously shows them that they're going to now be able to use their combo as well, because they'll have access to the snapshots and things. But you'll see that they have 122 armor now, which is an exceptionally large amount of armor, especially since a lot of my Jim Raynor cards aren't actually dealing any damage, which is the idea behind why I was trying to get heaps of Incendiuses into my pool, to be able to somewhat try and deal with whatever that they end up building here. I end up putting down my Ceaseless here, which is able to clear those minions that they have. I put my Jim Raynor down because I don't want to get stuck with too many of them onto the field, and obviously it ends up being able to kill the Ziliax that they have, and then I pass. In that turn, I really should have used the Triangulate to get extra Fizzles into my deck, just because I did have a Triangulate already in my hand, and it would have been able to obviously buff or waste the amount of TNTs that were available to them. They end up using their forged card, so it puts them into fatigue damage as well. So in reality, they're not making exceptionally great plays with their cards that they do have access to. So I do think that I can end up taking them out eventually throughout this game, but the fact is that they also are getting more new heights put into their mana pool as well, so they'll be able to access a lot more cards and things like that. And once again, I'm playing with the thoughts that I don't have... I didn't know that there was a hard limit cap of 60 cards in your deck, so I end up just going for the Eruption here, because I am trying to get more Eruptions in my deck with my Incendius. But in reality, I should have been putting more snapshots into there, just so then they couldn't put more TNTs into my deck. But the problem with that is, each time that they use one of their Jim Raynors, it is putting an extra... it ends up being 34 extra armor, because of the fact that they do have the Viking inside the pool as well. I end up just trading into their Ziliax and playing down the Jim Raynor. I just want to get it out of my hand. I don't want to have too many into my hand as well. And I just am also trying to see if I can take out their guy, take out their own battle cruiser as well. They end up using their bomb boss to be able to get more TNTs into my deck. So I think at this point in time, it's got quite a few, and it is increasing the likelihood of hitting those TNTs. I do have quite a lot of eruptions as well in my deck, which is something that I was trying to build up to be able to take out their armor. But the more I also, with me not knowing that there was a hard cap of snapshots in my deck, it was a little bit of a concern for me. So I'm just at the moment building up my snapshots. I should have in that situation grabbed another snapshot as well to keep increasing the pool. If I had known that once again that there was the 60 card cap, I would have gone for more snapshots, because I can always keep grabbing more triangulates and fizzles and snapshots, but I can't keep grabbing. They can obviously keep then adding in more and more TNTs into the deck, which can have a difficulty for this situation. So they end up playing down their Jim Raynor. I end up clearing it with mine. Obviously, it deals the damage that's there, but as they play more and more of them down, especially since they're now up to 22, 22. Now that they're up to 22 mana, it does mean that they are able to get more TNTs into my pool that's here. I do get to hit some eruptions, which are able to clear the guys that are there, and I deal a little bit of damage, but as you can see, it's not really putting much of a chip onto them. Like, it's putting a little bit, but it's not doing an awful ton. I do use some triangulates here to be able to get the extra snapshots into my deck to try and reduce down the amount of TNTs that they can possibly put into here. They use their snapshot here to be able to get another Fizzle. They use the combo with the Zola, and then they use their hydration station, gets them some more guys. They use New Heights to be able to get access to more armor. I do end up milling an eruption here, which isn't too much of a concern for me. As you can see, they're up to 155 health, so I haven't really done too much. With the Ceaseless Expanse, it does clear the Ziliax, but they're still sitting on a lot of health at the moment. So in that turn there, I really should have used another of my snapshots instead of using the hero power to be able to get the extra fizzles into my deck, so then they wouldn't be able to use the bomb boss onto me, or there wouldn't be as many TNTs in the deck for them to have bomb bossing. I end up drawing into another snapshot here, and I launch my Jim Raynor because it is able to clear the board that's here of theirs. And I obviously can get some more armor that can come from it. Once again, it probably was better just using more triangulates to be able to get more of the snapshots into my deck, so then they couldn't keep putting more and more of the bombs into there. They use their Fizzle here, and it gets their Jim Raynor. They end up getting more armor, obviously. Hydration Station ends up being used. They use New Heights, and then they just trade into my my Battle Cruiser. I use Ceaseless here. It ends up clearing, obviously. I've got Jim Raynor, so I use that. I've got the Snapshot as well in my hand, and I have the Triangulate, so I use another Triangulate. I really, in this situation, should have just grabbed some more Snapshots because of the fact that TNT would be clearing out quite a lot of my hand, and I do want to make it so there's less TNTs available for them. They use a Ceaseless, they use the Bomb Boss. I've increased the speed as well because it is just very similar and samey sort of gameplay. A lot of their TNTs now are hitting because of the fact that there is about 20 in the deck now. So in this situation, I do realize that I don't have many of my... I don't have enough of my snapshots to make sure it's clearing out. And you'll also notice when I am shuffling in cards and things like that, it's not shuffling in multiple, it's only shuffling in a few because it gets to the hard limit of 60. If I had recognized that 60 was the hard limit, it would have been better, obviously, putting more of the eruptions into my deck and things like that. You'll also notice that I don't, when my opponent uses the Bomb Boss, the TNT, it doesn't actually really put any of the cards into the deck. Like, it's not putting any right now, and that's because we've hit a hard limit of 60 cards into the deck as well, so I end up using my Incendious. They end up using their Ceaseless. They play their Jim Raynor. They play down their Battle Cruiser. They're just deciding what they're going to do. They use the Fizzle and the Zola. I use my Ceaseless Expanse, which clears. I get my minion. I use my Snapshot. And the same sort of play happens over and over. So they're using their Battle Cruiser. They use their Hydration Station. They are right now, I think, are deciding whether to use Jim Raynor or not. I use Ceaseless, I get more Fizzle snapshots. I use Triangulate, I get some more Ceaseless into my pool. Oh, sorry, I get some more snapshots into my pool. I end up overdrawing. I get some more minions that are here. They end up playing down a bunch of their draw cards. They end up using their Fizzle snapshot again. They trade. I use my Ceaseless. I use my Jim Raynor to be able to get more cards back. They end up I think they're deciding on what they're going to do. They do have the three of those draw cards in their hand, so it is quite weak. And then they end up using Fizzle, they use Zola, they use Ceaseless, they put some more bombs into my deck, but they can't do any because I'm at the full capacity. I end up using my, as you can see here, I'm using those snapshots, but each time it's not actually getting any more cards into my deck, which I am noticing here. And then I do hit a TNT. So I put some more snapshots into my deck because I did realize at that point in time that I'd hit the hard cap of the 60 cards. So I'm just trying to get as many as I can into my deck. Unfortunately, the game is starting to get to a point where it's going to be, doesn't really matter because of the fact that I do, there is a turn timer that's here. I do hit quite a lot of the TNTs here, so it ends up meaning that I end up losing a lot of my hands, so I have to wait until the turn timer, and I end up losing one of the actions that I could have been doing there. They end up using their Fizzle, their Zola, their Ceaseless, their Hydration Station, Jim Raynor. I end up putting some more cards into my deck with the Incendious just because I wanted to be able to try and deal some damage down to them. I really should have been putting more snapshots into there to try to reduce down the amount of TNTs that they have access to. They end up using their Fizzle, they play their board down. You'll notice that they have less cards available to them now, so they've used their snapshots and they're going to essentially reduce down the amount of cards that they have access to, and it means that with the cards that they do have the availability for, they're not going to be able to they're going to run out of cards eventually because they do get rid of their bomb boss. So if this game was actually available to keep going, I would have been able to win because of the fact that they didn't have any more bomb bosses available. They did have the Fizzle and the Vikings, but I would have been able to build a bunch of Incendiuses into the board to be able to deal with them. They end up using their Fizzle, their Hydration Station. It gets them more armor, obviously. They get the buff off. I use my Ceaseless Expanse here, and this is now getting really close to the turn timer because at this point in time, this game has been going on for nearly an hour, and it is, I think it's about turn 40 at this point in time. I end up choosing my Eruption because I do know that there is a turn timer, I just didn't know at which turn it would end up being. I play down my Incendious here just to be able to get some more damage onto the board, and obviously it increases the amount of damage the Eruptions are doing. But as you can see, I am back up to those 60 cards in the deck. They end up using their Ceaseless, their Fizzle Snapshot, and now that their pool is only the 5 cards that's there, it does show that they are now just going for more of a limited pool. So they ended up getting rid of a lot of those cards that they had access to. So they obviously keep using their Jim Raynor, and then that ends up becoming to the turn timer. So I hope that you've enjoyed this video and you recognize why Fizzle did need to be nerfed, because ultimately being able to have games like that where it literally is just a deadlock and everyone has infinite armor is just too much.